Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have another great guest on. Now, it's always a pleasure when I get to have guests on from the other side of the world because I get to hear a different perspective, and the accents are just amazing. So I definitely want to welcome, yes, John North to the show, and we're going to talk about his business, Evolvepreneur. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey, great to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, John, before we jump into Evolvepreneur, because I just love the name and I know there's a great story there, but before we jump into that, tell us a little bit about your background before you started Evolvepreneur.
I actually did some sums the other day. It comes to go back like 30 years now. I feel old. So I started working at a bank. Like I got a job when I was 16. So well, actually 15 when I worked in a major bank. And so I worked there for 12 years. And while I was working there, obviously really good. I was the best training in the world working in a bank. You get to learn customer service, customer complaints, and also how to follow systems, not just how to count money. And also keep your mouth shut too, like privacy. So it's a big thing. And so I sort of started an IT business on the side because I got sick of it after 12 years. And I just started just as computers sort of came out in the 90s, 89, 90. And so I started selling computers and computer software, all that sort of stuff. So I was in the, like I was working for the bank and then I was selling this computer software on the side, this accounting software. And basically eventually I got to the point where I just quit the bank because I'd had enough of them and I wanted to start a new business. So we started a new business. And long story short, that business went for we nearly got to nearly $1.5–2 million turnover within about 5 years. But we got hit with a GST in Australia, so it's a new tax that came out that added on to things, like your 10% of everything had a tax on it.
Wow.
Really good to start with, completely decimated me after that. Like within probably 3 months after the tax came in, my business was down 80% and just going.
Wow.
And so, but you basically had to shut it down. And I got a job for the first time in like 12, I think 15 years or something, 10 years. And I moved to Sydney and I actually got a job working in the same business, accounting software business I was selling. So then what I realised was they were in worse shape than I was when I started. They were actually almost out the back door. So we had to turn them around and get them into, we were the second largest Sage accounting distributor in the world after about 5 years of doing it. So all the marketing and stuff that I'd used in the first business that I'd learned, I spent like $100,000 on learning this stuff. I employed in the next business and then eventually I sold that business and we moved into marketing. And so at the same time, we had got someone from Africa to run a business called Evolve Systems Consulting for us. So we'd renamed and set this thing up. So it was called Evolve. And so when I sold the other business, I thought, I'm unemployed now. What am I going to do now? Right? And I thought, well, we've got this Evolve name. We still own the company name. Let's use that. So we started with just Evolve Systems. And then started doing marketing and book publishing and stuff like that. And then one morning, I don't know, I think I get my best ideas in the shower. So this is where it's basically came from. Right? It's like, what am I going to call this new? And we come up with, I thought, oh, it's got to be something to do with entrepreneurs. And then so I just sort of hit me out of the blue. Like, it wasn't like I'd spent hours figuring it out. So like, oh yeah, that's a good name. I'll use that. Some people don't like it. Like I've had a few people go, I don't really get it. And like I said, well, to me it makes sense, and it's unusual. And I think, and if you have a look around, there's all sorts of preneurs around, mumpreneurs and all these sorts of things. So we wanted it, to evolve people. So it fitted quite nicely. And then we started doing software development. We actually created our own platform. To help online businesses. So the long story short, but basically every time we started a new business, I just pulled up all the marketing and all the experience from the previous one, rolled into the next one, which means that we can kind of start a business in a week,
Wow.
rather than spend 6 or 12 months. I see people that, they go, oh, I'm going to start a business. What are you doing? So, in 12 months time, it's like, why not next week? Why not just next week? Fail straight away. Like, if it's not going to work, then fail quick, right? But people want to fail slowly. It's like, just try it. If it doesn't work, drop it, And
I
that's kind of
totally
how we.
agree with that because there are a lot of times where, when people want to take us, say, a year, 6 months, and it's just the way things evolve and change. I mean,
Mm.
in the markets, sometimes if you wait 6 months, what you're doing is already too old.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I got a good friend who's in marketing and he's a really smart guy. And he said to me that if he's talking with someone that hasn't done something the last 6 months that they're talking about, like they're supposed to be specialists in, he said they have no knowledge about it. So if you're not using it every day and you've got at least 6 months prior experience of that's what you've been doing, then the information's old.
Wow. Wow, that is a good point. That is a good point. And when I think about the name Evolvepreneur, I mean, it reminds me of just that the journey of an entrepreneur. I mean, it's constantly, the world is constantly evolving, and figuring
Yep.
out how to either evolve your way of thinking, evolve your ideas, and even as most of us are experiencing now, some for the first time, some this may be another crisis in the list of crises that they've had to work through, is with COVID-19. Is so many entrepreneurs have had to evolve. And when you think about that, like, how has your business kind of changed with
Mm.
COVID-19, and how have you
Mm.
had to pivot and evolve your business?
Mm. Well, for me, it was quite interesting because one of the things that one of my reasons for all those businesses got to levels like the recurring income was where we got there, how we got there. So when with the first business, I had $1.5 million worth of recurring income. When we set up the new business, we were heading towards $5 million worth of recurring income because we worked on a concept of getting regular small amounts of money in every month. So most businesses don't do that. So what they do is they rely on this big chunk of money coming in, or like a restaurant, for example, is relying on people coming in the front door. Once they're not coming in the front door, that's the end of their business. So in some respects, my business didn't even notice it. Like for 2 weeks there, for the first 2 weeks was like, okay, a bit quiet. This is back in March. Right? It's a bit quiet. Maybe everybody will die. Like who knows. And so then it just picked up again. And so, but we had that recurring income base coming through. And I reckon that no matter what business you're in, you can create some recurring income, even if you're mowing lawns, right? I come up with a concept for a lawnmower once, guide that how to generate recurring income. So the first question you always ask yourself in this situation is, do I have recurring income? Can I build something that gets me some sort of level of monthly money, or annual money for that matter? But monthly is better. People don't notice it as much. And so that's really what we did. So I sort of used the time to kind of think about what we were going to do and kind of regroup a bit. And then, interestingly enough, it's quieting down a bit more now, since like almost now that COVID's not necessarily over, but it's sort of settled into the community.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like it's settled down. It's gone a bit quieter again. But I think ultimately it'll pick up again once that that initial kind of shock factor goes. I think stuff going on at the moment with elections and things like that, that's going to slow things down. So yeah, but I think that's the thing. We didn't really change much. All we thought was, what a fantastic opportunity for online entrepreneurs now.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly everything went online. Suddenly all these speakers that wouldn't do an online, like a Zoom or anything, you probably had the same scenario, do podcast interviews and stuff, wouldn't do it. Oh, no, I want to do it in person. Like suddenly they don't want to do it in person, right? Now, suddenly they want to basically. So it's quite interesting the way that people change their perception and how people started thinking, well, online's not so bad after all. And I think that's a huge leap forward. I think we're coming like 10 years ahead because of that. So I think that's where the opportunities in the marketplace is online now, more so than ever. And it's not like this thing's going to go away, and it's not like it won't happen again.
Mm-hmm. No,
So
I
I think,
totally agree. I mean, I think that shift to people's comfort with online
mm,
and actually doing business online, I think it is definitely opened up so many opportunities. I mean, whereas, because I remember before with, being in consulting years ago where, you had to hop on a plane to go travel to a client, to where it's
mm,
like now you can do it from home, or I guess people feel more comfortable with you doing and accessing the data from home. It
yeah,
definitely speeds up your ability to be able to, you know, dive in and get to results faster without having the transit time.
exactly. And I think it's more efficient too and less costly too. So I think at the end of the day, everybody wins. I guess what I'm concerned about now is kind of like our software was invented for the purpose of this, almost for this situation. So it's quite interesting. I was like, could have a pandemic every so often, it'll be all right. I could get more business. But the reality was I'm concerned about is that the online entrepreneur now, when they go out to go online, and I joined a membership group the other day, like a Facebook group, and it's very well done. And they talk about their tech stack, and I look at it and go, it's almost like it's a badge of honor that you've got 15 different applications you use to run your business,
Oh, wow.
right? And when you start looking at all these applications, you go, they're just plugging things together. And when I was doing accounting software way back in the day, we only had Cashbook, and it was like DOS, like the old DOS, no Windows, nothing, right? So just had Cashbook, and then they had fixed assets, and they added all these different modules, invoicing. They're all separate programs, and eventually they became one,
Mhm.
right? And eventually everything's in just one system. And so I can't imagine doing your accounting now with 4 different programs, could you? Like, it just drive you insane.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's happening with online. And what I see online is that these people have 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 different applications. And so that means that they spend their entire life learning these applications and trying to make them work, trying to follow what these gurus are telling them to do, and all this sort of stuff. So they burn cash. And by the time they get to the point where they're actually ready to market, they haven't got any money left to market. They've actually burnt all their cash on trying to set it up. So we wanted to sort of develop something that would actually allow someone to do it in like 2 weeks rather than 2 years.
Wow. That's really good.
Yeah. And that was the premise behind it, was like, and so everything in this program, I said something the other day, everything in the software isn't there by accident because we thought it was cool. We put it in there because we figure it works. Right? Someone needed it. Right? And so, yeah, so that's kind of where I came from. So I've got this being a bonnet because I saw accounting software goes through the same thing. And I think online entrepreneurship and online marketing systems are still in the old days. They're still in the 80s, in my opinion, because they haven't evolved into this inclusive solution. And you see all these different applications trying to add things onto the side of them to make them more wider. But the reality is that their core is still whatever they started with. So their core belief is, oh, well, we do surveys, or we do websites, or we do this, but they don't, well, we also do this. We'll have a stab at that. And I think that's never going to work because your core business, your heart, if you like, of whatever software is the heart. You take the heart out, you die.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. So, I mean, when it comes down to Evolvepreneur, I mean, how did you approach that with making sure that, Evolvepreneur was, like I say, broad enough to really address, the issues that you guys target, but also at the same time, niche enough to where you don't water down the value?
Yeah, exactly, and that's a hard one. And I guess what we did was I had 2 clients that we were working with at the time. This is about 3 years ago we started the development. It's been sort of hanging around and being bits and pieces, but about 3 years ago we kind of started getting into it. And about 2 years ago or less we actually really got serious. And the last 12 months we've been programming like crazy. So what we did is we looked at these 2 clients, which I believe were my perfect fit clients. They were the clients that needed what I got. They already had established stuff, so they had courses and stuff, so we didn't have to invent that side. So, because one of the hardest part is A, doing software, like having a website, number 2 is actually having something to sell, right? And so we looked at that scenario, and then I looked at, okay, well, let's build it for them. Let's make it work for them. So we spent about a year just making it work for those 2 customers. And we learned so much out of that. Simple stuff like one of my clients sells heart-related products, like heart prevention books and stuff like that. And one of the things we noticed was that generation, that older generation, they can't cope well with e-commerce at all, right? They don't read, listen, or pay attention. So what happens is they click, start clicking, something doesn't go right. So they don't stop and look. They go, and so what they do is they buy 15 ebooks.
Oh, wow.
Right? And it's like, and then you get this worried email that you're a scammer because you just took out 15 times $1 or whatever you sold it for, right? And so just a simple little switch there to say, don't let them on certain products buy more than 1 at a time, which is not something I've seen much in any sort of e-commerce, to be honest with you. That little thing was major, in my opinion, because that was just a little kind of piece of functionality that really important that generates so many problems, right? And so all those sorts of things is what we did. We looked at what they need to do. So they need to be able to create a website. They need multiple platforms. So they need to have multiple websites because every entrepreneur never can settle with just one. Right, I had 45 when I converted over to my own system.
Oh, wow.
And then I got it down to like 20 something. But multiple websites, multiple different front ends, being able to sell something easily, be able to do a survey, be able to do a course, be able to have some sort of back-end community and management area for the client to be able to download whatever they bought or communicate, support. We've just finished affiliates. So we looked at all the different things that I know from being in this game for like nearly 15 years, is the things that people absolutely have to have when they start a business. And one of the biggest ones was podcasting. Yeah. So we decided to write a really cool podcast module because we felt that if you're going to start, what would you do? So we want to be in a scenario where if someone starts with us, we want to be one step ahead. You know the whole movie where that guy, it was a book about this guy that actually pretended to be all these different people like pilots and stuff, Catch Me If You Can. Right, and he was asked a question, how did he pull off being a professor at a university? And the question he was answered, he said, well, I just was one chapter ahead of everybody else. right? And so I was, right? And that's what we want to be. We want to one step ahead of that person. So once they've done one thing, we want to say, what's next in the list? And they go, oh, we got that. And so we figured podcasting was a really cool way to start your first business, because basically if you had a podcast, then you've got something to talk about, you've got someone to market to. It's pretty easy to create. It's nothing that's complicated, it doesn't have to be video. And so we built this really cool podcasting module, and we're finishing a guest module as well, because the idea is guesting, as you've probably seen, it's not fun, right? Guests don't do what they're told, and they don't, they don't tell you anything. And so we had built all that in a guest module so that someone could actually run a podcast with guests and maintain a process, right? So all process driven, automation. What can we automate? What can we process drive so that we don't have to worry about it? So that's kind of what I looked at. So every time we look at these businesses, it's almost like I've got these two clients I use, and plus myself, that we use the boilerplates for. Would this work for them? Do they need it? Yeah. And is it important? And basically most of the time it is. And then we just kind of worked off a very low platform of people that we're working with. So it's very select. Like when we sort of talk to someone, we say, would you suit the software that's going to work for you, or it's not? And then go from there. But what we found is people that are starting up or just starting are much easier to deal with than the people who've been there a while, because they have all these preconceived things that they want to do, which may not be that important. And I've been down this road with software, right? With accounting software, you get this big long list of accounting software requirements, and then you'd say one question said, okay, if I go and get these, will you use them? And they go, no, I'm just asking. I've just got a list. Ask stuff, like sound like I know what I'm talking about, right? Go, oh, right. So it's not that important to you at all. No, I don't really care about it. It's like, wow. What? and so that was where we sort of looked at it. So mate, is it important to you? Are you going to use it? No. I just like it. It sounds cool. It's like, yeah, righto. Like a good one the other day was Google reviews, right? I went and Googled Google reviews to figure out, because they said, well, you can put Google reviews on your website. But when you get into it, it's a big problem. Like there's hardly any way to do it properly. And all it is an API thing. You just go into Google and grab whatever's going on and stick it on your website. And so we could probably do that pretty easily. And it's very powerful, because then people go to your website, they see your Google reviews, and you've got that extra credibility, right? Simple little thing, huge result.
Awesome. So one of the things, I guess, if you have to say, or someone was asking, like, how would you define, what's the product that, Evolvepreneur, like, what would be I guess you say, is there a way you can describe it in, let's say, less than 10 words?
Less than 10 words. Yeah, it's a good one, because I've been through this process a few times, like trying to work out. And I think and lately I've been looking at it as being an online kind of revolution in the way that you do business. So it's a holistic way of doing business. It's not just a piece of software. It's a community. It's you're deriving something. So you're creating a business, an automated business, not just a bunch of social media pages or something, right? So gotcha. I think it's having almost an automated working platform that you can actually call your own. And control from big tech. So one of the things I don't like is this whole big tech thing. Yeah. Big tech's got too much control over these guys, and they wipe them out every day. They just turn their pages off and they're gone. Wow. And to me, it's like that's what has to change. You have to own your own stuff. So same with podcasting. It's a be in my bond about podcasting platforms, because they make it sound cool to go and use them, but the reality, you've just locked yourself in. Yeah. And you can't change. And to me, that's crazy, right? And it's just a couple of little things you do at the start that you should do properly that you will make a big difference, but people don't know about it, so they only learn after that. They should have shouldn't have done that. Sounded easy, sounded like I'll do it the lazy way, but it didn't work out. So I'm trying to create a revolution or a community or even a movement about the fact that the way that online should work. It should be simple, quick. It should be efficient. It should be automated. It shouldn't be complicated. It shouldn't be expensive either. It shouldn't be overly hard for someone to start a new business up online. Gotcha. By this huge tech stack. So when someone's looking for Evolvepreneur online or on social media, where can they find you and what should they search for? Well, you can try searching for Evolvepreneur. They'll probably find me pretty easily, because I don't think it's basically if you go to evolvepreneurapp, That's the main website that we have for that. There's also Evolvepreneur.club, which is actually kind of what we call eating your own dog food. So we actually have our own platform set up to kind of showcase what we can do and build a business around that. So that there are very different actual websites essentially, but the purpose is to show off what it works like. So if you go to Evolve.club, you've got the ability to see how it works. And just search either John North or Evolvepreneur on social media and you should find me. Should be fairly easy.
Awesome. Now, before we wrap up, one question that I like to ask every guest that comes on is when you think about your journey and you think about everything, you've kind of the ups, the downs, and what you've learned through, what are 2 pieces of advice that you would share with other entrepreneurs?
And it kind of varies on this situation because I think no good deed goes unpunished. Right, and so what I found in the process is if you do something and you think you're doing the right thing, you're not. And so a lot of times where I've gone off and done thinking I'm helping and I'm not because they don't appreciate it, right? So charge for what you're worth a lot earlier and probably don't spend as much money on stuff. When you go for big ticket items, have a bit more of a think about it more than you spend it. I think I look back and go, what a waste of money that was. If I just spent another day on this thinking about it, I probably wouldn't have spent that money. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the only things. But apart from that, I think, I always think that I could have done things faster, even though I did stuff pretty quickly. But you can do things faster. You can try it and see, and then move on. Don't be a perfectionist.
Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show, for telling us a little bit about your background, your journey with Evolvepreneur, and the wisdom that you shared. Really enjoyed having you on the show.
Cool, no worries. And while you're on my website, if you go to johnnorth.com.au, you can actually have all the books I've got written as well. So there's quite a few books on the subjects of publishing and all the automation stuff as well if you want it to.
Awesome. Well, John, you can't just leave us with a little taste of the books. You got to tell us a little bit more about the book.
Oh, okay, all right. I wrote 5, or I've got another book coming out called Authority, but it's not quite ready yet. We had a bit of trouble with Barnes & Noble. We've got a book called Everything You Know About Marketing is Wrong, which is really a marketing, get your head around marketing. And then I wrote a book called 5 Stages of Success, which is really the process we're talking about on the app. So what's the best way to set up a business, right? And then recently we wrote a book that says, book publishing secrets for entrepreneurs, so how to actually publish a book. So these all connect up, if you know what I mean. They all have a story that connects up to another story. And what we're working on the book at the moment is called Startup Secrets for Entrepreneurs. So kind of like a shorter version of all those 3 books to actually just sort of cut through and get it done fast. So yeah, so basically, there's, on my website I've got a bunch of books, and they're not that expensive on Amazon either. So
okay.
Yeah.
And you said the books can be found on johnnorth.com?
.com.au. So unfortunately I've got a fairly popular name. As it turns out, there's 2 people in Sydney that have got the same name as me. One's a lawyer and one's some sort of religious guy, a religious sort of leader or something. I don't know.
So if you get the lawyer or the religious leader, you're on the
wrong. It's not me. No. So just johnnorth.com.au. So or search Evolvepreneur, you'll find it for sure. I should be able to find it if I'm doing my job properly.
Awesome. Well, John, thanks again for coming on the show, for sharing all the insights, and we'll definitely include some links so they can find you online and they can find those books as well. And now, the book that you're working on now, when is the new one going to come out? So
Startup Secrets for Entrepreneurs coming out on the 30th of November. So I've got to finish writing that. So I'll try and write a book in a month. And then we've got another book called Authority, which is a part of 15 other authors that are coming out probably December now. We've had a bit of trouble with Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble got hacked, apparently, and got held up with ransomware, and they weren't prepared to pay for it, so they restored their database and basically put them in a bad situation where everything's behind. So that book should come out, and that's a Wall Street Journal and USA Today. We're going for those lists at the moment, so it's a big launch, that one. Mm-hmm. So that'll be on my website once it's up and running as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Cool. Thank you. Pleasure to be there.
Thank you for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like our content, be sure to follow us on social media. And if you want to see more of our exclusive content, you can subscribe and become a member on patreon.com/Business Talk Library. Hey, the Business Talk Library is the place where business makes sense.